Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the incredibly high-stakes reality of modernizing banking infrastructure without, accidentally breaking the strict regulatory frameworks that literally hold the entire financial world together. Think about it for a second. Every single day, trillions of dollars are moving through systems that were built back when disco was still on the radio. It's wild. We're operating in an era where the rules of product development are being completely rewritten under immense pressure. We're looking at a landscape where the constant drive to innovate, to build faster, sleeker, better, is violently colliding with massive, non-negotiable compliance mandates. So our focus today is how to actually maintain your shipping velocity during the mandatory global transition to ISO 2022, and really, how to survive the tightrope walk of modern fintech. So picture this. You've got a product manager at a fast-scaling neobank. They pitch, they build, and they ship a brilliantly designed, totally frictionless one-click savings feature. And it is a massive overnight hit with users. We're talking about boosting opt-ins by a staggering 37%. The team is popping champagne, right? But then literally 2 weeks later, the entire feature is completely rolled back and killed. The code is just scrapped. Why? Because internal audit flagged it as a potential UDAAP violation. UDAP, for those who don't know, stands for unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. The PM was so hyper-focused on reducing friction and improving the UX that they just didn't bother to loop in the compliance team pre-launch to make sure the disclosures were legally solid. Total fatal error. The regulatory wrath and the massive fines attached to a UDAP violation are absolutely terrifying to a bank. And this perfectly illustrates our core theme today. In fintech, you don't just own a product roadmap, you steward it through intense, unforgiving layers of control. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to hit 5 key areas today. Section 1, the modernization mandate. Section 2, the constrained innovation game. Section 3, killing the batch cycle. Section 4, managing real-time risk. And Section 5, the thin slice strategy.
Starting with Section 1, the modernization mandate. We are officially looking at the end of 40-year-old core legacy systems.
There is a massive surge in fintech hiring and infrastructure development right now. And honestly, it isn't actually being driven by consumer demand for a sleeker mobile app. Nope, it's being driven entirely by compliance deadlines. Global regulators are essentially forcing institutions to replace these legacy COBOL-backed ledger systems that have just been running quietly in the basement for 40 years. And at the absolute center of this pressure cooker, ISO 20022. This is the new global standard for electronic data interchange between financial institutions. It mandates a baseline for incredibly rich data messaging and real-time settlement. We're talking about vastly more complex data fields attached to every single transaction. Legacy databases literally choke on this XML-based format. They just cannot process it. So this isn't some nice-to-have feature you can just bump to Q4. It's a non-negotiable regulatory mandate forcing traditional banks to totally transition their infrastructure. If they don't, they risk severe regulatory penalties, getting locked out of global payment networks, and ultimately systemic failure. It's an existential threat that will absolutely stall all other product velocity if you don't handle it right.
Moving on to Section 2, the constrained innovation game, or how to navigate these endless layers of control. Navigating these layers completely redefines what makes a successful product manager in the financial sector today. And the contrast between traditional product management and fintech product management is pretty stark. Out in Silicon Valley, a traditional PM is taught to obsess over vanity metrics, right? Perfecting the user experience, increasing session time, maximizing app downloads, driving up daily active users, the whole move fast and break things mantra. But here's the thing. In banking, if you move fast and break things, you go to federal prison. Fintech PMs have to focus on survival metrics. We're talking about relentless auditability. We're talking about GL, or General Ledger Impact Mapping. You have to know exactly how your shiny new feature hits the general ledger, literally down to the penny, or you're going to create a massive reconciliation nightmare. A money transfer isn't just some fun user journey where you optimize the confirmation button color. It is a highly complex series of hold states, reserve allocations, and foreign exchange triggers. So what this really comes down to is how you frame your product decisions internally. If you pitch a new feature to the executive team by enthusiastically saying you want to delight users, but you totally fail to address the compliance overhead, you're failing the test. Good framing immediately acknowledges that user benefit is inherently bounded by the institution's risk tolerance. Another classic, absolute rookie mistake is ignoring the balance sheet. You can't just propose a sleek new cashback rewards program without mentioning float, or how you plan to manage liability accruals. Float, that money temporarily held in the system between accounts, is a critical financial lever, and ignoring it can ruin a product launch. A successful fintech PM models those financial impacts on day one. In this incredibly constrained space, having the physical scars from operational trauma, like spending 3 sleepless nights debugging a $2 million reconciliation gap, is honestly vastly more valuable than any standard product management certificate. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds, killing the batch cycle. We are moving from days to minutes. 24. For decades, the 24-hour batch cycle was just the perfectly acceptable back-office cadence. It was literally the rhythm of the entire global financial system. Banks would happily process transactions all day, queue them all up, and then run these massive, heavy end-of-day batch processes to reconcile everything overnight while all the customers were sleeping. It was the absolute standard. It's actually kind of funny to think about now, right? We have supercomputers in our pockets that can stream 4K video from space, but banking infrastructure has historically just waited for the sun to go down so it could slowly process text files in batches. Well, that 24-hour standard is officially dead. The new industry mandate is automated reconciliation in under 1 hour, moving rapidly toward atomic settlement. And atomic settlement just means both sides of the transaction clear instantly and simultaneously. So why the sudden rush? It's because of the explosion of real-time payment rails like FedNow and RTP in the US and SEPA Instant in Europe. These rails move actual funds in seconds. The problem is, when you connect a real-time rail to a 24-hour back-office ledger, you basically create a massive customer complaint generator. Imagine a user receives money instantly via FedNow. They see the balance, they go buy a coffee. The ledger, however, hasn't reconciled yet. The user buys lunch, and suddenly the system triggers a false overdraft cascade because the overnight batch just hasn't caught up to reality. It completely breaks user trust. Achieving atomic settlement and compressing that reconciliation cycle from 24 hours down to under an hour isn't a luxury anymore. It is a baseline survival requirement for any modern banking stack. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we secure this. Section 4, Managing Real-Time Risk, Defending the Perimeter at Speed. Moving money in real time introduces a terrifying core dilemma. It means you also experience fraud in real time. When you kill that 24-hour batch cycle, you also lose your 24-hour buffer to manually catch bad actors before the funds actually leave the building. You can no longer rely on manual human reviews or slow static rules engines. You need essential machine learning-driven defenses. We are talking about continuous model retraining and dynamic ML thresholds. Your fraud engine needs to adjust its sensitivity automatically based on the time of day, transaction velocity, and emerging threat vectors. You have to aggressively A/B test your fraud decision boundaries exactly like you would A/B test a marketing landing page. Furthermore, mature operations rely heavily on ML-augmented anti-money laundering alert prioritization. This scores compliance alerts by their actual likelihood of conversion, vastly improving analyst productivity so humans are only looking at the highest risk anomalies. By tightly segmenting cohorts and constantly tuning these models, top-tier fintechs manage to keep their card payment fraud rates well below that industry benchmark of 5 to 15 basis points, and they do it all without drowning their compliance teams in thousands of false positives. Which brings us to our final operational strategy, Section 5, the thin slice strategy, executing the migration safely. So, how does an incumbent bank actually execute this massive core replacement? Like, how do you switch out the engines on a commercial jetliner while it's flying at 30,000 feet without causing a catastrophic outage? Historically, some very brave and, frankly, very foolish banks tried the lifeboat or Big Bang migration. This means trying to move every single customer, every product, and every ledger to a new system all at exactly the same time over one long weekend. It is incredibly dangerous. Legacy systems are plagued by Rumsfeldian known unknowns. Undocumented, bizarre edge cases buried deep in 40-year-old code written by engineers who retired a decade ago. Big Bang migrations almost guaranteed total failure. The modern, highly preferred alternative is the brownfield thin slice migration. This leans on a modular, vertical, and API-first architecture to drastically lower your risk. Let's walk through exactly how you execute that strategy step by step. Step 1. You absolutely do not replace the whole core at once. Instead, you select a single, low-complexity vertical product slice. Think something like a very basic, vanilla retail savings account. Step 2. You build and implement a brand new API-first cloud-native infrastructure just for that specific slice. Step 3. you migrate only those specific savings account customers over to the new stack. It's a small, controlled blast radius. You prove it works securely in production. And finally, step 4, once you have the undeniable proof points and you've ironed out the kinks, then you expand iteratively into more complex domains like lending or commercial checking. This methodology is exactly how smart banks maintain their release velocity, keep regulators happy with their modernization progress, and avoid blowing up the entire institution in the process. So I'll leave you to ask yourself this final provocative question. Is your product roadmap actually building the future of finance, or are you just putting a shiny UX on a legacy batch process? True modernization isn't just about front-end aesthetics. It requires deeply understanding the complex plumbing of the financial system, fully embracing the relentless constraints of mandates like ISO 2222, and building a foundation that is truly ready for real-time risk. If you only focus on the pixels, the underlying pipes will eventually burst. Thank you so much for your focus during this explainer, and good luck navigating your own modernization mandates.